دارم.
Damn.
We have had a fair amount of genuinely tense, scary, but exciting films combining action and horror elements, but they are rare. Where mixing comedy and horror is very, very difficult, you'd expect mixing action and horror to be a bit easier. After all, both are about creating and paying off tension, having moments that pump your adrenaline. The problem is about what you show, and how you build into it. In action films we expect to see what is happening. We want to see the gunfights, the explosions. When it happens off screen, it's for a reason. You want to see just how crazy things get, so you can wonder just how the characters will get out of it. With horror, things are scarier when kept to the darkness. It's what you don't or can't see that scares you. The moment we see the monster in the suit, or what the ghost looks like, it becomes less scary. Seeing a fleeting hand or a hard-to-see figure pass by in the background gives us a quick fright that leaves us unsettled. You feel like anything could happen at any point. The mere suggestion that something could occur is enough to put you on the edge of your seat. Action horror is tough because of our expectations of each genre. Action films are usually about people being caught in unlikely situations, and so in some way having to fight their way out. The odds may be near impossible, but almost always the heroes succeed. That's what makes the situations work. We feel like they have no chance of survival, and so celebrate when they succeed. The tension comes from working out how they will survive, or win. With horror, if anyone were to physically fight, or even be able to fight, whatever antagonistic force they are against, it immediately makes things less scary. Helplessness is a big part of horror. The idea that if you fall asleep, you will die, or that you're caught in a house of a force seemingly able to bend the laws of physics, laws that you cannot. In action, you may be weak, but you have a chance. Horror is about the dread of the inevitable, and not knowing when it might happen. So why do franchises like Resident Evil and Underworld have such big fandoms? Why are Universal trying to recreate Marvel's success by developing an action-packed, interconnected monster universe? Action horror can work, but it becomes about intensity, about insurmountable odds. My favourite action horror films are Aliens, Dog Soldiers, and Zack Snyder's 2004 remake of Dawn of the Dead. Each of these films have incredible moments of tension, but also of unbelievable intensity. They are more about horrific situations. Where films like The Last Witch Hunter and I, Frankenstein deliver neither solid fright or satisfactory action, there are sequences in these three films that can shake new viewers to the core. The helmet cam sequence in Aliens puts us effectively in the eyes of the soldiers, and immediately shows us exactly why these overpowered looking soldiers stand little chance against the aliens. Playing with our expectations from the first film, where we had seen but one alien, here we are introduced to there being so many more. The film builds a feeling of dread, that if the majority of the highly trained, well-armed military cannot defeat this violent force, how will those left be able to do it? Dog Soldiers is obviously very much inspired by Aliens and a little bit of Night of the Living Dead, by sticking a group of Scottish squaddies in a country house and keeping the werewolves mainly to the dark. The film isn't scary as much as it offers some great characters that at least I did not want to see die. There is an honest camaraderie between these guys, and the idea that they'll be torn to shreds is tough to stomach. You want them to win, but how could they? The film doesn't skimp on the gore, and by the end we do see enough of the werewolves, probably my favourite werewolf design, but the key, like Aliens, is to give us solid characters we care about, and put them in an intense, almost impossible situation. These are trained soldiers, but they're caught in unknown territory, against an enemy they find to be almost invincible, with only the promise of the sun rising offering any semblance of hope.
Come on, have a go if you think you're not enough!
Dawn of the Dead remake for me is quite an underrated action horror. Though 28 Days Later arguably had elements of action horror prior, for me Snyder's film melded the two together more effectively. 28 Days is a great film for the most part, but it's definitely better at the horror than it is the action, with the final mansion sequence nowhere near as effective as the rest of the film. Say what you will about Snyder, but he does a great job with the remake. Firstly, he actually made a relatively acclaimed modern horror remake, which is difficult enough, but also was able to competently meld horror and action. At the time, the concept of running zombies bordered on sacrilegious, but you can't deny that it gives the creatures a ferocity that has informed the deluge of undead films we have been inundated with since. The chaotic opening is tense, horrific, and surprisingly affecting. This could be anyone's neighborhood. At times genuinely creepy and at others incredibly exciting, before being followed by one of the most chillingly impressive title sequences ever that unnerves enough to keep you on your toes throughout the film. Snyder also knows that zombies are inherently not that scary. Though the first true cannibal zombie film, Night of the Living Dead, still creeps me out somewhat, in the end zombies are just humans, albeit a bit more bloody or rotten. As the remake of Dawn of the Dead goes on, it becomes more and more of a straight action flick, but it works. The horror elements are still there, but the creative team respect the audience enough to know to not try and scare them anymore. Once again it becomes more about intensity, about insurmountable odds. Like the characters, we are more used to this new terrifying world, and so it's time to get out and simply try to survive. The more recent action horror films really seem to have gone more for action and simply thrown in classic monsters. They might be slick and cool, but generally they are poorly made and reviewed. Using horror elements but removing the fear just leaves you with usually poorly CG'd creatures facing undercooked hero characters. There isn't anything inherently wrong with that, but they need to look back on what actually works within both genres and in the classic action horror films, if they want to make something that truly walks the line between action and horror, and works as a movie. For me, films like Priest, I, Frankenstein, Dracula Untold, Van Helsing, and franchises like Underworld and Resident Evil will never be scary, because the heroes are too damned powerful, and the enemies too often front and center. This isn't scary. It might be impressive, but facing a hero like this, it becomes tiresome. There are some fantastic action horror films out there, so it can be done. But too often, studios simply want a new action franchise, with some werewolves or vampires thrown in to change things up. They're splitting their audience, and chasing increasingly less popular franchises like Resident Evil or Underworld. Audiences like being scared, and they like being excited. And you can blend the two. Just perhaps consider making the heroes a bit more relatable, and the enemies a bit more in the shadows, and who knows what you might get.